to get the most out of life. You got to believe in yourself with all your might. You got to be brave and put your heart on the line. You got to be bold. It'll be alright. First comes the dawning. There's something out there I missed. Then comes the knowing. There's something better than this. You stop believing that this is your destiny. Put yourself riches and let your heart be your guide. You got to be bold to get the most out of life. You got to believe in yourself with all your might. You got to be brave and put your heart on the line. You got to be bold. It'll be alright. Joy and adventure can't describe all your days. You'll have a knowing. Oh yeah, in so many ways. You stop believing that this is your destiny. When you let spirit show you what life's meant to be. You got to be bold to get the most out of life. You got to believe in yourself with all your might. You got to be brave and put your heart on the line. You got to be bold. It'll be alright. Well, can't you feel a change is coming? And you will know you're alive. Can't you see? Woo! It's all around you. Take that journey with your life. You got to be bold to get the most out of life. You got to believe in yourself with all your might. You got to be brave and put your heart on the line. You got to be bold. It'll be alright. First comes the dawning. There's something out there I miss. Then comes the knowing. There's something better than this. You start believing that this world is too wide. Drop down 12 inches and let your heart be your guide. You got to be bold to get the most out of life. You got to believe in yourself with all your might. You got to be brave and put your heart on the line. You got to be bold. It'll be alright. Well, can't you feel a change is coming? And you will know you're alive. Can't you see? Woo! It's all around you. Take that journey with your life. 'Cause you got to be bold, how to get the most out of life. You got to believe in yourself with all your might. You got to be brave and put your heart on the line. You got to be bold. It'll be alright. You got to be bold, hey, to get the most out of life. You got to believe in yourself with all your might. You got to be brave and put your heart on the line. You got to be bold. It'll be alright. You got to be bold.
Oh, Reverend PJ Stanley, Reverend Dr. PJ Stanley, thank you so much. You are such a gift to us. Thank you so much. Dr. PJ is our treasurer on the board, and
not treasurer.
I'm sorry. Why did I say that? Yes,
never.
Secretary of our board, never treasurer.
Never.
Yes, beautiful. So I just saw a chat that said somebody wants to be in Jeffon's breakout room. It is not a breakout room. It's right here. So stay right here. He will be on in just a couple minutes. I'm Reverend Dr. Michelle Whittington. I am the host for this hour's session, and I'm so delighted to be here. I'm also the new executive director of ANTN, which just pleases me no end. I love this organization. I've been involved for over 25 years, and to have this new role is really precious to me. A couple things before we move into our amazing, first of all, our invocation and then our amazing speakers. We always want to reiterate the vision of ANTN, of the affiliated network, and it is to connect the New Thought community through consciousness and love. And that is what we're doing here today. And I'm so happy that each one of you is here to have an experience of this connection. And as Dr. Jerry said at the beginning, that this is a free event today. We're so happy you're all here. If your heart calls you to make a contribution, we would love that and welcome that. You can do that at ANTN.org or newthought.org. And we believe in the principle of giving and circulation. And so we absolutely share the gifts that are given here today with those who are giving their gifts as speakers and musicians. So please let your heart decide on that for you. All right, so to set the tone a little bit more, even beyond what Reverend Dr. PJ did for us, I want to invite Reverend Dr. Charles Geddes to offer our opening prayer. Reverend Charles. And be sure to unmute yourself, hon. Unmute yourself.
Okay.
There you go.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Let's all take a deep breath. And that breath being the reminder of consciousness and originating cause and the pure reality that it is unconditional love. It is pure energy. It is light, love, life, power, peace, beauty, joy to the depth, to the core of every cell, of every fiber of our being. And as we open to remember that, we come into awareness that we are conscious of self, that is such a gift, and that we have been given the opportunity of choice in this journey. And that choice is better or bitter. That choice is deepening our awareness, expanding the potency of love and regard for self and one another, or getting caught in stories that block and bind us to the past. So on this Earth Day, we are open to being aware that we are stewards of this journey. We are stewards of this adventure of life and opportunity. So knowing that everything that occurs this afternoon in this session and through every speaker, that the only speaker listener reality is that presence. And we declare it so right here, right now. And so it is.
And so it is. Thank you so much for setting the beautiful tone for our world rooted in love for this next hour. We do want to keep reminding you of a few things because they're just really important, and those that we know people are popping in and out of this day. So just two things that ANTN does on a regular basis, and one of them is our new thought, or our Thought Leader Thursday, which is the last, not the fourth, but the last Thursday of the month. In the morning, it's 9 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. That's the time I always have in my mind because that's where I am. And it's an hour of thought leaders bringing inspiration, insights, motivation, all sorts of beautiful experiences. It's a free service that we offer. So please, please join us the last Thursday of this month. Reverend Allie Benjamin will be our presenter that day, and she has just got the most amazing heart that you will want to experience if you have not yet, and if you have, I know you'll want to be there. The other thing is our annual retreat conference, which has been for the last several years and will continue to be for the next several years at Unity Village in Kansas. We are having that the week of September 26th, and it is truly, truly an amazing experience. Unity Village is awe-inspiring, and if you've not been there, please put that on your list of things to do. We'd love to have you there this year. It will be an incredible experience of learn, love, decide, and do. One of our keynote speakers will be Milagros Phillips. And we have a video, just a little short video to introduce her to you. And I'm going to turn this over to our technical gurus to get that video running.
Race literacy is a concept that I use. I actually wrote a book called 11 Reasons to Become Race Literate, because I've been doing this work for more than 30 years, and I have a particular program that I do that takes 2 days. And what I noticed was that the biggest aha with people was how little they knew about their own history with race. And so I realized that that's one of the places where the juice is, right? So I focus a great deal on that. And for me, race literacy is the conscious awareness of the history of race, the ways in which we are acculturated into a racial caste system, the impact that that has on all of us, and the ways in which we have absorbed, whether we're conscious or not, the ways that we have absorbed that system. So it's really a deeper understanding. And as far as the healing, for me, what I realized, in doing this work for so long, excuse me, that was that people are absorbing this thing that we call race, which is a myth, right? There are no genetic differentiation between one group or human group and another human group. But that myth gave rise to racism, and racism is real, right? And what I realized in doing this work was that not only was racism something that affected people at the level of the mind, but it also affected people emotionally, it affected people physically. And so for me, if we're going to heal, we need to look at the impact of racism on all of us as a human family in mind, body, spirit, and emotions.
Oh, so that's just a little taste of what we will experience together at the conference in Missouri. My apology, Reverend Sherry. Thank you for that correction. In Missouri in September. And if those of you who don't know who that beautiful woman was to the left of Milagros, that was our beloved Reverend Dr. Martha Creek, who is very involved in our organization. And she had her own thing happening today and couldn't be with us, but she will definitely be with us at the conference. And she is in fact the conference or the retreat co-chair this year, along with Dr. Bill Marchione. So it will be an amazing experience. But we are now going to move into the amazing experience of right now. And we have 3 beautiful speakers who are going to give us what we're calling power talks, 15-minute power talks. And so speakers, you are on your own to make sure you stay in within the 15 minutes, because I don't want to have to take the hook and pull you off. But we want to make sure everyone has their 15 minutes. And we're going to start out with Jeffon Seely, who I have not yet had the privilege of meeting. But Jeffon, I'm so happy to have you here. First of all, congratulations on the new baby that you and your wife just had. So that's very exciting. And Jeffon is a senior consultant and transformational speaker with Innovative International. He's a leading edge millennial and recognized resource in the field of diversity and inclusion, generations, mindfulness, and leadership. And I love this statement that was in his bio, so I have to share it. He is committed to transformation and dedication, and dedicated to influencing each person he comes in contact with to not only recognize their potential, but realize it. Wow, that's the way to live New Thought, folks. Please welcome Jeffon to talk about Empowered by the Infinite.
Thank you so much. Those round of applause and spirit fingers are reverberating through my house right now, so I greatly appreciate it. It is a real honor and privilege to be here with all of you. I've had the privilege to see some familiar faces, seeing many new faces, but I know that we cross paths with people at just the right time. So the insights, the conversations that you all were having prior to getting going was actually extremely inspiring in recognizing the ways in which we show up and begin to broadcast our light. And notice it's not just our light, but broadcast a light that exists within us, while also simultaneously recognizing the light that is existing within other individuals. And beyond that, I mean, even the planet, the sun, and everything in between. And it's very fascinating on my specific journey of New Thought. And I will mention, if you see me looking down, because I took that Apollo hook very literal, I have my timer going off here. So I don't want to be dragged off the Zoom screen and then you just see my photo bouncing up and down. Nevertheless, I think about my specific journey, and all of our journeys are unique. There is no one journey that is more sacred, more divine, or more holy than anyone else's. And it's fascinating at times when we as human beings often see one path as superior to another person's path. And when we do so, perhaps we are not living new thought, but we are continuously entertaining old thoughts that were often passed down to us, have been habitually ingrained within our consciousness, or even unconscious patterns that simply exclude a vast majority of individuals. And I know in the work that I do, the ways in which I show up and try to bring this message towards all individuals I have the opportunity to interact with, a lot of it takes place within the corporate realm. Now, I'm not going to say who worked for the IRS because I heard that that's forbidden to do. I'm not going to say who was a part of the DOD because I know, nevertheless. But every individual that we interact with, whether it's in the corporate realm, whether it's in our spiritual communities, whether it's somebody who has a completely different view than our own, whether it's somebody who's on the other side of this planet who we will never in this experience have the opportunity to interact with face to face, there is something that is magical that connects us. What I'm going to share with you, I am sure, is not something that is brand new. In fact, when we think about new thought, it is not brand new. It's nothing that's extremely revolutionary. Instead, it's universal. And from a certain standpoint, it's common sense. But as they say, or as I was reminded just the other day, common sense isn't so common. And so the sense that we try to make is very, I won't go there. I'm speaking from love. So I began this journey in this realm, in this time, in this unique part of America called Salt Lake City, Utah. Now, some people, when I say that, there is a question that just immediately pops into their mind without them thinking of it, or without them even being aware of what that question is going to be. And it usually is along the lines of, Jeffon, were you Mormon? Or are you Mormon? It's one of those two. Well, one time I was giving a keynote and I was saying that, there's usually a question that comes up that everybody asks. And I asked the audience to share what that question is. And somebody randomly said, do you ski? And I'm like, that wasn't the question I was thinking of, but no. Well, growing up, I did have the privilege to go to the Mormon church with my grandmother. I'm biracial. I was raised with my grandparents on my mother's side, who was adopted from Scotland. On the white side of my family, my father is African American. And growing up and going to the Mormon church, and I recognized at a very young age that there was something that seemed to be missing. First and foremost, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but there are times where you hear things that people who are in positions of authority are telling you to believe, but when you interpret that internally, it doesn't feel right. And I know that was definitely the case for me at a very young age. In fact, I remember when I was reading one of the first lines of the Bible where it said, in the beginning, God created all. And with that simple idea, I started thinking, well, how can there be anything other than God? Is not then the devil God? Is not then all this evil in that the divine creator itself? And how can something that God or the infinite created be more powerful than that which gave rise to it? And you see, these were questions that they didn't like me asking. So I quickly knew that this probably wasn't the place for me. Now, this was before I had the idea that, or realized that there were spiritual communities. So I kept bouncing around in high school and in college, went to metaphysical Christian churches, which I am very grateful for, because it allowed me to see these sacred texts, the Bible and things of that sort, in an entirely new light. And I started recognizing that perhaps it wasn't a middleman, in this case, Jesus, or in other cases, it could be any of the other prophets or spiritual individuals who walk this earth. Perhaps it's not a middleman that is needed between me and the infinite itself. Perhaps it's simply a recognition in my own consciousness that I am that which I am seeking to find, or seeking to be, or seeking to attain. And with this realization, I realized that there is nothing that is separating me from that which is, which means if I encompass this or expand this, there was nothing that is separating me from you or anyone else on this planet or in this universe. And with this brought about a realization when I moved here to Atlanta, And I thought there were a lot of churches in Salt Lake City, which there are. But if you think there's a lot of churches in Salt Lake City, wait till you come to the South. I mean, on every other block, I'm like, all these churches, how do we not have peace? I mean, what's going on? So I jumped on my trusty cosmic search engine, Google, and I searched, what is a spiritual community in the area? And ask and ye shall receive. The Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta popped up. Maybe some of you know Reverend David Alt. He was the minister there. And I started going there. And it's like all of these things that I've been reading, all of these ideas about Christ consciousness, all of these insights that felt true, that no one else told me to believe, but just felt true within myself, started to reveal themselves to me in this type of community. And so I just immersed myself in it. And David Alt really served as a great mentor in terms of opening the door for me to speak at the first spiritual center I ever had the privilege to speak at, and that's SLCA in 2014, and then encouraged me to continue to go out and speak at other spiritual communities without any practitioner license, without being a reverend or a pastor. And I've had the privilege to speak at right about 200 different centers across the nation, which then spawned into speaking in the corporate realm, which I've been doing now for about 5 years. But enough about that. What I realized was something quite profound, and this is where I share this unique little slide. I realized when on this spiritual journey, I began recognizing this word that we often discard or speak very freely of, or without giving much thought, this whole concept of oneness. I started realizing that the infinite universe that we are all a part of, the gases, the minerals, the elements that are combining and intertwining in such a divine and miraculous way, harmonious way, that stars are being formed. Galaxies are actually being birthed in this very moment as we sit here taking this breath, looking at this screen, being a part of this conversation. I began recognizing the divine order of all that exists out there. The sun that is shining on this sacred earth, the earth that is spinning in such divine and harmonious manner, the trees that are reaching towards this light, the seeds that are awakening to their own inherent greatness as they are resting in soil that has been accumulating nutrients since the beginning of time. The rivers that are flowing, the streams, the oceans that are ebbing and flowing. And you see, I started looking out here at this divine order that is ever present. But I didn't stop there. You see, there is not only this miraculous universe out here, but if we have the courage to look within ourselves, we begin recognizing our mind that is thinking, our hearts that are beating, our atoms that are dividing, our atoms that are thriving, our cells that are dividing. And as my mentor often says, instead of looking out here at how miraculous it is for this earth to continue to exist, why not turn our attention also inward and become an astronaut of inner space, recognizing the infinite and the divine, the ever-present essence and energy that is dwelling at the depths of our being. And if we are willing to do so, it transforms and shifts the way in which we show up in this world. So that, from my perspective, means not only embracing the divine, but that ultimately means the solution that I've been looking for all of the problems that I face individually or that we as humanity faces collectively has less to do with what another person does and more to do with how I individually am showing up day in and day out. There was a miraculous and incredible idea of 3 degrees of influence. It says that we influence people 3 degrees removed from ourselves. So for instance, if I am speaking with Michelle, or if I'm speaking with Carla, her and I have an interaction. She influences me by the words that she says, but it doesn't stop there. What she says and how her energy that she brings towards me ripples out into my friend and also my friend's friend. So we start recognizing that everywhere we go, we are sending these ripples out into the world, whether consciously or more often than not as humans, unconsciously. And therefore, what we are looking at is the effect that we have assisted in bringing about, which then circles back to this whole idea and concept of new thought. Do we actually, and this is a question for all of us to answer internally, You do not need to shout this out unless you want. Well, maybe not right now, but you can shout it out if your microphone is muted as loud as you want, you know? Do you believe, from your own personal perspective, that you are embodying these truths that we are spending our time here professing? Or are there times when you go throughout your day, 168 hours in a week, where you forget to recognize that oneness that we spend so much time articulating to others? And I know that it is very easy for me to sit on this side of a screen. It is very easy for me to put my thoughts together in a way where I can communicate and hopefully inspire somebody to recognize something that they may have forgotten in their experience in this moment. It is an entirely different thing when I wake up in the morning and I am with me, and I am faced with many of the hurdles or difficulties that show up on my path, and those ideas of it's all one, it's so eternally connected. I am inspired by the divine creator that enables me to think thoughts, to choose choices, to empower the feelings that I bring into my being, to commit to these conscious actions, which create this miraculous and majestic type of experience. I forget that, and I simply go back into the cyclical nature that has been ingrained in me for quite some time. So a new thought requires us to continuously recognize our ability to have a thought, understanding that we are not at the mercy of any of these thoughts that we happen to think or that happen to pop into our mind, but instead we are that which gives rise and power to those thoughts. And there is a incredible recognition and realization when we start realizing that we are not at the mercy of our thoughts, our feelings, and our emotions, but we are that which gives rise to our thoughts, our feelings, and emotions, which means if there is a difficult, challenging, unfortunate circumstance that is happening to us on an individual level or a collective level, the most revolutionary thing that we can do is think different. And does that mean that those storm clouds of negativity, doubt, fear, anxiety, worry, anxiousness will not pop in our mind anymore? Absolutely not. But we begin recognizing in the same way we would not chase after a dark storm cloud. You know, Jesse, we wouldn't drive beneath a dark storm cloud wherever it goes, going across the country, just making sure that we're getting torrential downpour on our car because we want that so bad. We would simply just let the storm clouds pass, knowing that there will be a new thought that pops up. Such is the case in here. When those dark, difficult, frustrating ideas or thoughts begin to pop into our mind, simply rest in the sacredness of your being. Look up at the conscious mind, which is the sky, and let those clouds pass by and make a conscious choice to focus on that which not only brings you hope, positivity, love, compassion, and peace, but that which reflects that for all of us. And as we do that, we start recognizing the true words of new thought. Thank you, peace, and blessings.
Thank you so much, Jeffon. Oh my gosh. Everybody take a deep breath. He began by sharing a story of questioning. I love that, and left us with this amazing question of how are we showing up? Thank you for that. That will be worth listening to again and again. Oh, so we take all that beautiful energy and wisdom in, and we move to our next beautiful speaker, Reverend Sally Robbins, who I'm so happy to introduce. I'm going to get teary because Sally and I are dear friends, but we haven't seen each other in a long time. So pardon me for getting a little verklempt here. Reverend Sally has been an ANTN minister, or became an ANTN minister in 1998, started a church in Baltimore area, and then became a Centers for Spiritual Living minister and served several churches, one of which was actually back as an ANTN minister with Creative Living Fellowship with me in Phoenix, which I'm so delighted that we had that time together, Sally. She now lives in Asheville, and is that right, Asheville?
Asheville, North Carolina.
Asheville, North Carolina, and no longer is a pulpit speaker on a regular, on a full-time gig, but absolutely speaks here and there and now and again, and is amazing when she does that. She's also an author, and we see her frequently in the as a contributor to the Science of Mind magazine. So her articles are always amazing. Reverend Sally is going to talk to us about roots and wings.
Thank you, Dr. Michelle. What a pleasure it is to be here. ANTN is where I started. And so it is like old home week to see all my old friends and to be a part of this wonderful organization. So when I saw that the theme of our wonderful conference today included the word roots, I thought, you know, that's such an important concept for us to really have deep spiritual roots. And so then roots, but then you have to have the wings. And so I wanted to address that today in this power talk, because I think they're both so incredibly important to have. And so, too many times I have found myself focusing on one and leaving the other out. We need to really be looking at both. And so I want to start with a story from one of my favorite movies. It's called The Nun. Next slide, please. And this is Audrey Hepburn, and she stars in this movie, The Nun. She said it was one of her favorite movies to ever do. And I love this movie because it talks about and it shows how Audrey Hepburn, who's her name is Gabrielle in this movie, she goes into the convent, and she really struggles throughout the entire movie trying to figure out her place and is this the right path for her spiritually. It really does a great job of showing the internal process of finding your own spiritual path. But one of the best parts of the movie is right at the beginning when she goes into the convent and her father takes her there, and they're waiting in this little ante room before the women go into the convent, and the families are there. And so she's there with her father, and he points out a woman to her in nun's garb, and he says, that's the Mother Superior. She's what's known as a living rule. And Gabrielle says, well, what's a living rule? And he said, if this convent burned down today or went out of business, if every book about our spiritual faith was burned and gone, all anyone would have to do to learn the concepts of our faith would be to look at her and see her example of how she lives her life, because then that is how you know the spiritual principles of this faith. And I love that idea of being the living rule. And I've thought about that over the years, how important that is to understand that as we grow, are we still being a shining example of what these principles are all about? Am I showing up as love, as kindness, as compassion, as joy? And when I get to a place where I'm not embodying that, that's when I think, oh, wait a minute, I do want to show up as a living rule here. Because if I'm driving in my car down the street with a namaste bumper on the back and I flip somebody off, that's incongruent. That's not me being a living rule. And so I love that idea that we're deeply rooted, so rooted in these principles that as we grow, we are shining examples of these principles. We are embodying them in everything that we do. I want to show up as love wherever I go. And that's always, love can be firm as well as gentle. And so how am I showing up? Am I rooted enough in my own spiritual principles and staying with my spiritual practices to stay on center and be with like-minded people, like in this wonderful retreat today, to get a recharge, a reboost of what I'm here to do? Being rooted is so important, but then we also have to be ready to spread our wings and to grow and to evolve. And Ernest Holmes called that the upward spiral, that we are always evolving rather than staying static. I want to talk about another story about the city of Chicago that way back in the 1840s was having a serious problem. It was basically at sea level with Lake Michigan. And in 1849, a horrible cholera spread out, and a horrible blight upon the whole city there. And what was the problem was that the sewage was running into the Lake Michigan, where they were then getting their drinking water. So they had two issues. The sewage wasn't getting distributed where it should, and then it was contaminating their drinking water. So the city at the end of 1849 said, you know, the public gathered and said to the city leaders, we cannot do this anymore. You've got to figure out a way to make this work. So they hired this engineer, and his name was Ellis Chesbrough. And as a matter of fact, he developed this sewer system that it's still called the Chesbrough system in the United States, but it was way above anything else that had happened. And in the 1850s, he started putting together this system that was going to take care of the sewage and then get clean drinking water. He did this in two different ways. First of all, he said, we've got to jack the city up. We've got to literally put the houses and the buildings on jacks, some up to 10 feet high, so that then they could create the sewer system that ran underneath the city. This had never been done before. He developed manhole covers so that they could get down and clean the system. All of this started happening, and then they still were having the problem with the sewage going into the river, so he developed water treatment systems. And then he had to figure out, okay, well, if we can't get the water right at the lake's edge, what if we put a system out in the middle, 2 miles out? I'm going to show you a picture. Next slide, please. This is what he developed. So that you see the left side is there on the shore, and they went out 2 miles out into the Lake Michigan, which is huge. And they built this tunnel down, and then they started tunneling towards each other. So a tunnel from the land and a tunnel from the sea. And this tunnel is so large that people can walk in this tunnel. And that's where they got their water. It started coming in, and to this day, they're serving 9.5 million people in the Chicagoland area. And I've lived in Chicago. That's some of the best tasting water ever, because they were bringing it in and they were been treating it. Next slide, please. There's the actual physical location as it looks today. They're still using, they've got 7 different ones out there now. They're still using this system. And it comes in, it's piped in, and they raised the city. Now, I love the idea there. Next slide, please. You see the water purification plant. There's on the right side there is a whole entertainment system. I mean, this is one of the cleanest, most wonderful devised systems there is, and it's still in use today. Talk about an idea that really took shape, and now it's all over the country and all over the world. But the idea that he said, raise the city. And I thought, what a beautiful analogy. We have to raise our consciousness when we are growing our wings and growing into that which is yet to be. And so we raise our consciousness, just like he was jacking up those houses and those buildings. And that's my job. It's incumbent upon me to raise everything within me to that level of greater understanding, and then to keep moving that up and up and up. And from that place, we can see that we absolutely have the chance to grow and spread our wings. Next slide, please. Ernest Holmes says this in the science, How to Use the Science of Mind, which is still one of my favorite of his books. It is though we are dipping up water from a limitless sea. Each day we may use a larger measure, and each day dip up more. The ocean will never become exhausted. As a matter of fact, everything we dip up will run again back into it, only to take a new form. So I can go to Lake Michigan today, and I can take out a cup of water. I can take a bucket, and I can get a bucket of water. Or I can put a giant tunnel like the city of Chicago does, with a person can walk in, and they pump out 1 million gallons a day. And the lake just keeps replenishing it. Rain, snow, whatever. The lake doesn't care whether I have a cup, a bucket, or a giant tunnel of water. The lake will keep replenishing. And that's what I love to think of when I start thinking that my piece of the pie is so small. No, this is an unlimited universe. And if I'm really grounded if I'm really a living rule of religious science and of new thought, then I get to understand that this is an unlimited, vast resource that I can always tune into. I can always say, this is the dream, my desire. I'm going to spread my wings and move into a whole new level of living. That's what I'm here to do. So am I receptive to knowing the truth about who I am? We have to have the courage to grow our wings. I was reading another fabulous book. It's called Risk Forward by Victoria Labalme. It's a little tiny book, but it's very powerful. And she wrote about how way back in the 80s, she created this group in New York City that was it was an informal creative lab, and she wanted a place where people could come and they could really talk about their creative energies and what they could do without the dream crushers. You know what I'm talking about? The dream crushers going, you can't do that. Who are you? And so she created this thing called the PAC, the Performing Arts Collective. And then one of the earliest members was a guy by the name of Chris Wink. And he had been looking for a community like this for quite some time. He needed to have a place where he could express and go, this is what I want to do, and not have people tear him down for it. Because he had a really simple idea. He wanted to make himself bald, turn himself blue, and walk around New York City and see how people reacted. That was his dream. And the PAC said, yeah, that's great. Go for it. Go for it. So one of the first people he ran this idea by was his friend Matt, who was a software engineer. And he thought Matt was going to laugh at him. But as soon as he said, you know, I think I'm going to get bald and I'm going to paint myself blue and walk around the city, Matt said, that's a great idea. Let's do it. Well, then they found a third guy. Next slide, please. They found a third guy, and the Blue Man Group was born. This was 1987. And so it started out small. They started doing small performances in small houses, but they had the courage to say, this is where I want to spread my wings. This is where I want to grow, and I want to express creatively. This is what I'm born to do, is I'm meant to be a creative being. And it grew. Now it is all over the world. It is housed permanently in Las Vegas. And back in 2017, Cirque du Soleil bought the Blue Man Group. It was quite a wonderful way for him to grow his wonderful idea into, next slide, please, these performances that just rave, people are raving about all over the world. And Cirque du Soleil said, we believe in this idea. We want to take it even farther. Talk about spreading your wings. And this allowed him, Chris, to find his spot in the universe. And I'm sure there were lots of people along the way who said, that's crazy. But he said, I'm going to go for it. Next slide, please. So I understand my only job is to grow my wings, to grow my consciousness. Ernest said, we can make bigger buckets. We cannot make a bigger law. The law knows nothing about big and little. It knows only to do. So my job is to see through the obstacles that might be in front of me to the unobstructed field, that place in consciousness that knows there are no limits. There is nothing that I can't do. If I'm showing up as my creative, powerful self, then I get to choose how I'm going to be in this world. I'm going to close with a story. Next slide, please. It's about a jaguar and a hummingbird. And the jaguar and the hummingbird lived in a forest together. One day, a very violent fire broke out. It was all over, and all the animals started running because it was burning everything down in its path. And so the jaguar started running, and he noticed as he was running, all the animals that he was running with were running in this direction, but he noticed that this hummingbird was going in the other direction, flew right past him. And he was like, wow, why is he flying into the fire? And then all of a sudden the hummingbird's flying back over his shoulder, going back the other way he came. And then he did that a couple times. And finally the jaguar decided to say, wait a minute, hummingbird, don't you know there's a fire? Why are you going back into the fire? And the hummingbird said, I'm going out to the lake, and I'm filling my beak with water, enough water, as much as I can hold. And then I'm going back into the fire and I'm putting it on the fire. And the jaguar said, are you crazy? your little beak, that can't do anything. That's not going to stop the fire. And the hummingbird said, I know, but this forest is my home, and this forest has fed me. It's housed me. It's where I pollinate the flowers. It's where I get to do what I do. And so this forest is very special to me, and I must do my part in trying to save this forest. Well, at that moment, the forest gods heard him and heard the bird talking this way, and they were so moved by it that miraculously they opened up the heavens, and a downpour came and just drenched the fire, and it was put out. Now, when the Native American grandmothers tell this story, they say to their grandchildren, do you want miracles in your life? Then do your part. Do your part. And so that's how we know that it's our part to grow our wings and take our place and do what we're here to do in this world. And I hope today that we all can remember to stay rooted in our principles, but grow our wings so that we can fly beyond anything we've ever imagined before. I'm so glad I could be here with you today. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you so much, Sally. We talked earlier in a breakout about how do we spread new thought. There it is, right there. There it is. We go deep and we spread our wings. So beautiful. Thank you so much. What a delight to be with you again.
Thank you.
Oh, so our third in our amazing trifecta of power talks this morning is Edward Miller, who I had a privilege of being with a little bit in the earlier time where we just had a chance to chat. And what a delicious and beautiful soul who lives what he's going to teach us today. He's going to talk about, to introduce us to the amazing, powerful practice of Ho'oponopono. And Edward, just to give you the full time, I'm not going to introduce you in any other way other than to say you're an amazing being of light. Thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you for inviting me. This is a real gift. I really appreciate being with this group of speakers and ministers. It's been very heartfelt, and I really appreciate it. I want to give you a little bit about me. I am a science of mind background. I've been part of science of mind since I was in my early 20s, which is a long time ago. And I studied very much about the New Age movement with Dr. Daniel Morgan in Los Angeles, California, or in Inglewood, California. I don't know if any of you guys knew him, but he was my mentor and he taught me so much. But in my life, I had a lot of responsibility and I had a lot of stress and a lot of trauma. And I was going through my life trying to figure out how can I heal this trauma. I tried with spiritual mind treatment. I tried every technique that you can imagine in the New Age movement for trying to heal my heart. I became a devoted meditator early on in transcendental meditation. I was, trying to get to that peaceful place where I could have confidence in my groundedness and in my heart. But I just seemed to keep struggling. By the time I got to my mid-40s, I was overwhelmed. My body was contracting. I was in a lot of pain, but I kept putting on a good face because I was a community leader and I was in a position where I had to show leadership. And I didn't want to show leadership, so I faked it. I pretended as though I was strong and capable and ready for the world, but in trueness, I was crushed and my heart was broken and there's just a lot of things going on. But then I learned about a practice that changed everything in my life. And I've been teaching it for the past 15 years. And I pushed it on Dr. Charles Geddes, and he allowed me to have an arena to sell it and promote it even more. But that's what we're going to be talking about. But I want to first talk about, in the last 5 years, I put a compilation of practices together and I wrote a book about it. And that's the book you're seeing on your screen now, Soul Power. So if you guys are interested in knowing a little bit more about my story, a little bit more about how I explored Ho'oponopono and how I kind of create a whole complete package of programs and intentions in order to really get into teaching people to transform their life and inspire themselves and get rid of the suffering that our minds do in order to be free. So let's go to the next slide. you know, the intention of Soul Transync, which is the business that I created, was cultivating a more important relationship that exists, cultivating the most important relationship that exists. And really, you know, we always think, what is the most important relationship that exists? It's the relationship with ourselves. And we're not ever committed to that, because we're so committed to our families and our friends and our institutions and our things that we believe are important to us, but we have totally disregarded the most important relationship that exists, and that's the relationship with ourselves. Soul Transync is a transformative, comprehensive, and complete practice for cultivating self-love. This is all about self-love. I didn't understand that. I thought I did love myself because I went and I worked out and I did all the things I thought were supporting me, but I was a broken man. Nurturing self-love inspired peace, happiness, and freedom from all my suffering. It gave me the space to feel connected and grounded with myself. It was such a gift. And I then started wanting to share that gift with everyone because it was so transformative. Let's go to the next slide. Soul Transync, the practice that I teach, incorporates 3 powerful approaches into one practice. And we talked about that, and even the other speakers talked about it. One of them is non-duality. You know, it's becoming aware of our true nature, becoming aware of ourselves as God creators, becoming aware of ourselves as the space, as the unmanifested. And that's a real relationship, by the way. You know, we're so used to seeing ourselves as a person or an identity, but when you start to see yourself as conscious awareness, it creates a space to be open for all kinds of opportunities of relationships. The next one is the inquiry. And I just love inquiry because it's been an opportunity for me to question and inquire about my identity and my thinking and my beliefs. And it just given me a space to re-explore some of my stories that I was caught up in. I mean, what has happened in my Soul Transync practice, I get a chance to every day explore the small little stories that oppress me. We all have them. We all have these little things we believe in that keep us small and keep us contained. Well, if you're doing inquiry, which I do all the time, you start to inquire about what you're believing, who you believe you are. The last part of this practice is the Ho'oponopono. And Ho'oponopono embraces a loving relationship with our ego self through forgiveness. Ho'oponopono is a very incredible practice. I learned about it from the story that a lot of people talk about the Hawaiian mental hospital, and how this Dr. Hulen came in and was invited into this mental hospital to change the hospital or to run the hospital. But what happened is that he brought in the practice of Ho'oponopono. And it's been well documented, it's been well communicated about that this hospital went through a major transformation because Dr. Hulen stayed clear with what his intention was, is that he came in there to clear and clean consciousness and not to change anybody. And he was not there to do one-on-one coaching. He was there to change the vibration in this hospital, and he did. You know, the story goes that within a few years, there were major changes in the hospital. And if you go online, I think Dr. Hulen just died, I think just maybe last year, but there are some credible interviews about him and his non-dual practice of Ho'oponopono and how he approaches Ho'oponopono. You know, my whole practice, and Dr. Charles, who was on this workshop also, it was that I was really committed to exploring my relationship with myself in a very deep way, because I realized that that was the only really relationship that really existed. And that as I grew in my relationship and my loving relationship with myself, I saw myself differently and the world transformed. It was a beautiful thing. It was a beautiful thing. You know, when we end this presentation today, I'm going to have a little 7-minute meditation I'm going to take you guys through, which is, I think it's beautiful because it kind of explains the mantra. The meditation that we're going to do at the end of this talk has a binaural and isochronic meditation, brainwave in it, which helps to take your mind to that zero space so that you can take on the suggestion of the mantra and really relate to it in an intimate way. It's very, very powerful and important. Let's go to the next slide. The secret to Ho'oponopono is there's no such thing as out there. Everything happens to you in your mind. Everything you see, everything you hear, every person you meet, you experience in your mind. You only think it's out there, and you think that absolves you of responsibility. But in fact, it's quite the opposite. You are responsible for everything you think and everything that comes to your attention. Yeah, this is a really important concept about the Ho'oponopono. You know, as I've evolved in the Ho'oponopono, as I've evolved in this soul transcend practice that I teach, I'm really very aware of, you know, when I'm in loving mode, when I'm in a mode to be aware of myself, there's a whole lot of things that I feel as though I'm attached to, which I'm really not, because there is nothing to be attached to. There are no objects out there that keep me here or keep me there or make me do this or make me feel that way. I need to learn to be very clear about what I'm believing and feeling in my own heart and stay committed to that. And at the same time, not only staying committed to it, but be loyal to my own heart. Ho'oponopono is a beautiful tool for doing inner child work also. You know, with a lot of my clients, I take them into deep meditation, and we reconnect with the inner child and start a new dialogue with inner child, because that's where most of our trigger and most of our woundedness exists. And as we learn to relate to that child differently, our point of view opens up. You know, my big thing is that I had a lot of trauma with my mother. You know, I used to believe my mother was this character that was just, you know, it was very mean to me and harsh and unrelenting, and that, you know, she was just, you know, not a very nice person as a mother. You know, Ho'oponopono, just the practice of it has given me a whole new context to my mother, who she is, what she's tried to accomplish, how she really was responsible for creating a very strong and determined man in me. So it was a forgiveness that I thought was I had to have with her, but it was with the forgiveness I had to have with me, with these trauma stories I was so used to telling myself about my life. I mean, I, like a lot of people, was very addicted to telling unhappy stories about me and my experience. But now I'm very consciously aware that those stories can't be true. Nothing is true. And the only thing that matters the most is the love, and the love I have in my heart, and the love I share with myself and the world. I mean, I feel such an intimacy with the world now. All of you guys, I'm just so pleased to be here to share heart with you. And this is all a result of me relating to myself from love first. Let's go to the next slide. The Ho'oponopono has 4 steps. There are 4 very simple steps. And there's repentance, which is I love you. I love you. I love you is so intimate. We all say I love you, but we're used to saying I love you to someone else, to an object outside of ourselves. But when you can feel that intimate love and affection you have for yourself, it opens things up for you. It makes you feel grounded in the world and open to all kinds of opportunities. You know, forgiveness, please forgive me. You know, when I say please forgive me, I'm saying please forgive me to what I'm bearing in mind, because it can't be true. Nothing's true. Everything is an opportunity to heal and let go of and release in forgiveness and love. Gratitude is the next one. You know, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for everything I see. Thank you for everything I experience. Thank you for everything that's been available to me. Thank you for my mistakes. Thank you for my awareness of how I'm contracted in a thought and a belief that sometimes can be small. Thank you for all of my awarenesses. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Staying gratitude, continual gratitude is so beautiful for your heart. And when you live in the world and your mind isn't always in gratitude, you can connect with people in a way that's so beautiful and authentic. So beautiful and authentic. And lastly, the unification. I love you. Wow. I love you. I love you. You know, the more you repeat that phrase to yourself and you say it in a very genuine, heartfelt way, it warms your heart. And because I've done a lot of inner child work is giving me a context, when I'm feeling and triggered, because you're going to be triggered. You're going to have emotions. You're going to also have thoughts. But when you are, and you remember the truth of who you are, and you remember your inner child is bearing most of those assaults to begin with, you can then go back to that child and say, please forgive me. I love you. I love you. On my phone, which is what I recommend to a lot of people, is to put a picture of their inner child or their youthful child on their phone, so they can see that child and regularly connect with in an intimate way with I love you, I love you. And it really changed. Just that one thing, having a picture of your innocent self available to you all the time, really warms your heart. When you're feeling a little out of sorts and you're feeling a little overwhelmed, you just go back to your love, go back to your forgiveness, go back to your gratitude. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you is such a beautiful way of connecting with yourself. All of this is about yourself. One of the beautiful things about the Ho'oponopono practice is that there is no one else. There's only you to love. And as you expand this love for you, the whole world is transfixed for you. I want to end this meditation. End this second with my short meditation. As I said, there's a binaural isochronic meditation in this. And are we through, or we don't have time for that?
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Bill.
Edward, wonderful stuff. We are scheduled to be out of the session about now.
Okay.
But I also have listened to the meditation, and it's pretty wonderful. Next up is the social scramble. And so actually let's have Michelle do the closing for this particular session. I'll explain how the social scramble works. Then we'll do your meditation, and we'll pick up the social scramble after that.
Okay. The meditation, I just think, is something that you can get to online on YouTube and download for yourself. Also, you can go to my website and download many other Ho'oponopono meditations that are great for changing your psyche, opening up your heart.
So, Bill, do we want to
Yeah, just go ahead. You
Okay.
close the session the way that you were going to, and then we'll do the meditation.
Okay, perfect. So I just want to thank our three speakers. Let's just give them a hand by doing this. Edward, Jeffon, and Reverend Sally, thank you so much. Just amazing, beautiful inspiration, all of you. And to all of you participants, thank you so much for being on this particular session, as well as just being with us today for however long you are with us. As Bill said, we've got the social scramble coming up. Lots of amazing things happening this afternoon, including the affinity groups and an all-star concert tonight, and just amazing things. So let's just close our eyes for just a moment and be in a space of gratitude, a gratitude for all that we have experienced thus far in this precious day and all that is yet to unfold. Thank you, Source. Thank you, God. Thank you, life. And so it is. Amen.
So it is. Amen.